Hello and welcome to another episode of Coffee with the Chiropractor. It's your host, Patrick Hogg. And we're going down to Fulham today to speak to one of our previous guests associates. This chiropractor graduated in 2018. She went to Life West over in California. She's been in practice for about 3 years. She's currently, like I say, practicing in Fulham and living in Kingston, originally from Aylesbury, and has like a very broad concept of chiropractic, but very, very much focused on chiropractic techniques. She has a few niche different techniques that are very chiropractic based. One of the most interesting adjustments that I've personally ever received is actually from this next guest. And this is a specific technique called network spine analysis, which isn't necessarily the most common type of practice that you'll see from chiropractors, but also has abilities in diversified, which is the type of chiropractor that most people will see from their YouTube videos, etc. Practices SOT, toggle, and knee chest as well, but also runs her own business in renewable face cloth table pieces. So what she actually has as well is that a lot of people that have been to chiropractors and seen the paper that all the chiropractors use for the headrest, Hannah actually makes renewable ones for cloth so that people don't have to create so much waste in their clinics. So please welcome to the show our special guest, Hannah Emmett. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So I know I probably won't have done you complete justice. So maybe you can just fill us in on a little bit more of the details that maybe I missed out about you.
So details of, I always like to call myself a here, there and everywhere girl, having lived so many different places, but that's partly due to my father. So I did originally start my chiropractic schooling in the UK. So AECC, WEOC, had some turmoil, so hence going out to California, but also had a very good mentor in the sense of Brian Kelly, who also just knew I was meant to do chiropractic. So followed that instinct, but it was being out there that also enabled me to dive much more into network spinal, especially as it was taught as an elective. Donnie, who is the founder for Network Spinal, did most of his teaching in Denver. So just a plane ride away, but it was enough that I could go and learn and hear the stories, and then also help out occasionally when Danny, his stepson, took over and started doing all the teaching. So yeah, so December 2018 is when I came back, did all the UK GCC licensing stuff so that I could get practicing, and then started working with Chris.
Amazing. So look, obviously everyone's got a slightly different story when it comes to chiropractic. Some people obviously just, they find themselves falling into the profession. Some people have had a profound experience. Like you said, you've had mentors and stuff that kind of guided you to it. But maybe you could explain to us a little bit of the reason why you chose chiropractic, or why chiropractic maybe chose you.
Okay, so I originally danced. So I danced from the age of 3.5, 4, and kind of got to the age of 18, and very much my life was like, well, I want to go to dance school. This is what I want to do. So I auditioned for places like the Royal Academy of Dancing, which is the equivalent to the Royal Ballet and some of the London schools of dance. But I kept failing my medicals, and it was like, well, why am I failing my medicals? This doesn't make sense. I eventually kind of started dancing full time, and within 6 weeks of literally dancing full time, my body just decided to lock up to the point of not being able to walk, let alone lift my leg the height of a step. To do a plie was impossible, and kind of got really frustrated. And we were very much, oh, it's just new muscles. It's new muscles, it's fine. Let's work it out. And kind of 4 months later, this was like, this is not going anywhere. What's going on? So my dance teacher actually suggested I saw a chiropractor. So I went and saw the chiropractor. She saw a guy in Brentwood, and he kind of explained what was going on, and we managed to link it to an incident at school 5 years earlier, in which someone pulled a chair from underneath me at school. So instead of me landing on coccyx, as most people do, I actually landed on one side. So I managed to kind of displace my pelvis, which was enough. Then when I started dancing, my body was like, yeah, not doing this. So with the help of chiropractic, I actually managed to do my advanced modern, my advanced tap, grade A ballet. So I kind of like the top ballet exams and other exams. So that's kind of how I found chiropractic. Over time, I kind of wanted to teach, but then I just fell out of love with dance and teaching. And so I went off to uni in the hope of doing physio because I still wasn't kind of on the mindset with chiropractic. Had the opportunity to go out to Palma Devonport in 2003 for the Lyceum weekend. And the guy I was talking to, who was one of the admissions guy, was a dancer. And he had actually said to him how chiropractic got him back on his feet to dance. And it kind of just made me realize, I was like, if every single dancer could be under chiropractic care from the beginning, how much less injuries would they have?
It's an interesting question.
Yeah. So, and kind of my journey kind of started from there. And then I did originally have an idea for my project, but if I'd have done it at Wales, which is, I was like, I wonder how many times a dancer actually gets whiplash from doing all the turns, like doing their pirouettes and their chaînés and everything.
Yeah, there are so many sports that are like that as well.
Yeah.
And it's not. I mean, just look at stuff like rugby and boxing, and any really big, heavy contact sports, American football. These guys get huge injuries, concussions, whiplashes, pretty much every single time they get onto the field. It's actually just interesting. You can obtain a whiplash and is having a car accident in as little as 15 miles an hour. And the reality of it is you're in a big metal box. When you're doing stuff like dance and rugby and all these other sports, you don't have this huge network of kind of crumple zones and airbags around you.
No, I was lucky at Life West. We actually had one of the fastest growing rugby teams in USA Rugby because we got one up from scratch. Mm-hmm. So most of actually the USA female rugby team, the Eagles, are actually chiropractors or chiropractors to be.
Yeah, makes sense.
And I've seen it all. I got to adjust some of the rugby team under supervision. It was amazing adjusting some of the ex-All Blacks and I'm going to say the really big Tongans because they're not small, they're big.
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, Leicester Rugby Club in this country is all under the care of Ulrich Sandstrom.
Yes.
So they're all under chiropractic care, and I'm pretty certain it's AC Milan. I can't remember if it's AC Milan or Inter Milan. They're all under chiropractic care as well.
Yeah, and then of course, you've got Fulham Football, who are under Nick Metcalf.
Yeah.
For chiropractic. So.
Yes. They're and the thing is that these sports clubs are looking things at a preventative measure. Yeah, we as a population still haven't quite hit to terms with the idea of prevention is significantly better than cure.
Yeah, definitely. It's about getting there.
We will get there one day. The chiropractors will eventually get people to understand that we can prevent things much easier than we can cure them. So, Hannah, every chiropractor has almost a different routine and regimen in how they look after themselves, but there is pretty much one thing that is very, very clear, that most chiropractors tend to like looking after their own health. So maybe you could give us a little bit of advice on some of the most important things to you, or some of the most important principles for you maintaining and taking care of your own health.
So there's probably about 3 big things that I do, which are important for me. So one is I definitely go and get network spinal care for myself. And so being so few of us, I am lucky being kind of closer to London because there is a little bit more of us in London. So I do go up and see somebody in Notting Hill for that. The other thing that I very much do, and he is very well known in the chiropractic world, but specifically in the network spinal world, because he actually used to be the chief editor of the Journal of Alternative and Complementary Medicine, is I occasionally will have a session with a guy called Dr. Kim Jobst. And Kim has been in my life for about 5 years now. Partly because I came severely ill and nobody could figure out what was going on. So just occasionally having a chat with him and having a mindset and kind of looking at what's going on mentally with, if there is any physical symptoms coming up, see, well, what is the effect? What is it I'm manifesting? And then my third element is very much practicing the DeMartini method. So John DeMartini's work, and just trying to break things down to kind of neutralize it in some ways and see that there is a blessing for whatever has been thrown at me. And I suppose there is actually one fourth big thing that I do, which is food state supplements that Chris and I have actually just introduced to the clinic.
Yeah, I'd seen, I think it was magnesium that's just been introduced.
Yeah, we've introduced 11, but there's about a range of 30 odd.
Right, okay. Interesting. Okay. So look, obviously there's quite a lot going on. So for those that potentially have never heard of Network before,
yes,
because a lot of people, if you've seen a chiropractic online, and this is really interesting because I get this every single week, is, are you going to do that thing where you wrap the towel around my head and yank my head? And that's what the general population's education of what an adjustment looks like. And I can promise you that is not what every single adjustment looks like. So
no.
I've had a network adjustment. I had my network adjustment done by Hannah. And I can tell you, it's probably one of the most gentle techniques that I've personally ever received. I think the only thing that kind of comes in line with it is SOT, which is, again, is very, very gentle techniques. But maybe you could explain what network is good for, how it works as an overview, and then maybe some of the key things that it might help with.
Yeah. So network spinal came about, Donnie came across it accidentally, in the sense he was like, how can I put the least amount of effort in but get the biggest results? And one day he basically had somebody in with a cross-legged, so they had laying face down with their leg over, ready to do an SOT adjustment. And the phone rang, so the receptionist called him out and said, I think you need to take this. So left the guy there, came back in, not realizing that he hadn't adjusted the guy and crossed the legs, and the legs were even. So Donnie kind of said, well, what do you do? He goes, well, I took a few big deep breaths. That was about it. So Donnie kind of looked at other techniques and started bringing them in. But network is very much looking at spinal cord tension. So he got the book by Alf Brigg, which is called Adverse Mechanical Cord Tension. And what we don't realize is when we start actually pulling forwards with the text neck and increased lordosis, it's not just our joints, it's actually our spinal cord that starts pulling. So Donnie's very much started looking at all the spinal cord tension and what happens, whether it be lateral bending, flexion, extension, and also realizing that the spinal cord is actually made up of two. It's not one big thick cord like we think it is, it's actually two. So you can have one side of the spine pull, but not the other side. So my way of describing how gentle it is like touching the white of your eye. And people look at me and go, what? I'm like, yeah, it's really gentle. But it has so much effect physically, mentally, emotionally, even chemically. We store, as much as we think we store everything in our joints, it's our spinal cord that we store it on, which is our nervous system.
It's difficult to necessarily explain that to a patient as well, because when you look at, say, for example, someone's posture, and it's interesting because I've seen the photos of cross sections of people where the spinal column position has changed, but how much an effect that makes on the actual spinal cord itself, and how dehydrated the spinal cord can become, because it can start to affect the way that the cerebral spinal fluid can start to come around. It affects the way that neurons work within a cross section. So the number of actual nerves in your spinal cord can actually start to change when you start looking at this stuff. Now, personally, I don't do NSA, but I have seen a lot of these cross sections and then this isn't specific to network adjusting, by the way. This is across the board. If it works, it works. But with this kind of a process, say for example, I've got patients with very, very severe fibromyalgia, and these kinds of techniques where obviously big manual adjustments, diversified adjustments with relatively high force. I say high force, no adjustment should be high force, but much higher force than something like NSA is going to be a lot less triggering if you're doing something that's only the pressure of touching the white over your eyeball.
We do actually have a client that has MS, so multiple sclerosis. Mm-hmm. And when she first came in, every time she would be using a stick. I'm very wobbly. And we've now got her to the point she can walk 2 miles without her stick. But she does know that if she's having an emotional moment, it can set it off a little bit more.
Amazing.
But it's been interesting watching her.
Yeah. Working with like chronic patients like multiple sclerosis, you can't necessarily reverse. And this is, by the way, as a disclaimer, there's no point saying that we're treating the MS. All we're doing is adjusting the function of someone's body and improving the way that person's body functions. And as a result, it tends to have a positive impact on the way that someone's neurology starts to work. Now, if you've got a neurodegenerative disease, something like MS, and you make their nerve system work better and their spinal cord work better and their joints move better, that person can function better. That doesn't necessarily mean you're treating or curing the disease. You're just helping that person to function at a better level.
Yeah, and it's also not many people know. So my brother is actually medical. Mm-hmm. So my brother is 4 days a week. He does something which I keep very quiet about because of the nature of the work. And then 1 day a week, he is an A&E consultant. Mm-hmm. And we often sit and we discuss, well, how is it you're changing things? And it's like, well, it's your wires in your neurosystem. And he's like, but I don't get it. And I'm like, but you looked at chiropractic when you were 18. Come on, you should know this. Mm-hmm. But it's difficult to try and explain to somebody, let alone somebody that is not from a medical background, to somebody that is in a medical background, that they see the difference and they're like, that doesn't make sense. How are you doing that?
Doesn't need to make sense though.
No.
You just need to know that it works.
Yeah.
By the way, there are a lot of things in the world that I don't know how to put together an engine, but I know that it works.
Well, I took apart an engine when I was 18.
Yeah. And I don't need to know how it works so long as it keeps working underneath the hood. And by the way, when it doesn't work, I take it to the person. They'll try to explain it to me. My mechanic, I catch him every single time. He goes, "Oh, it's because of it." And I'm like, "Does the car work?"
Explain, just fix it. Yeah.
Does the car work? Yes, fine. Here's the money. See you later. So I just want to jump back a little bit as well, because you were talking about the food state supplements as well, and I'm a little bit intrigued. Maybe you can explain some of the reasons why you supplement alongside chiropractic care as well, and some of the supplements maybe you would advise.
So the reason for me personally, I started supplementing is it was through my mentor, Dr. Kim Jobst. So mm-hmm. we actually went through the functional med tests mm-hmm. and realized how depleted I was in some areas. More noticeably, like the mortifying one for me was vitamin D. Having spent 6 years living in California, being out in the sun, loving being in the sun, and then literally a year later to have my vitamin D levels checked and they were like single figures, it was like, yeah, what happened there? Wow. So I tried other supplements before and I struggled. It's like my body literally would reject them. And the only way I could put it down was because of chemicals. So we started high dosing with the vitamin D, and I mean high dosing, but it was done under supervision. And within a month, I noticed a difference. and I just felt like I had more energy again and things. So, I mean, for me, my big ones, I always go to are vitamin D, especially this time of year, because of course we don't have sunshine this time of year. So, and especially on a day like today.
Mm.
Magnesium. So magnesium is great for the nervous system, muscles, joints, everything.
It's a pain pump inhibitor, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, that one for me is, if I don't take it regularly, I'm that person that wakes up with cramp 2-3 o'clock in the morning, that I literally have to get out of bed because it's screaming cramp.
Mm-hmm.
So if I take my magnesium, no problems. Yeah. And then I also take selenium.
Yes.
To do free radicals.
Yeah.
So and B complex. But I need to take B complex, but my body doesn't do that at the moment. It rejects it.
Right. Selenium seems to be a good one that works really well with thyroid functions as well.
Yes.
So, okay.
So we know kind of things function a little bit erratically with me at times.
Yeah, and that, by the way, that's the same with a lot of people, which is the reason why we need to have measures.
Yeah.
If you have a measure and you can actually check in and see how this, and this is the reason why. And by the way, notice that with Hannah, what she's stated is that she said 3 points, but she sees an individual person for each one of those areas. You know, she's working with DeMartini. She's also working with King Yobs, and she'll go and see specific network chiropractors in order to take care of her health. So she's looking at different areas, both physically, chemically, and emotionally, but taking care of all three of those areas, and not necessarily all with the same person.
No, but also they are ironically all linked, because Kim is what, even though I knew John through school, John DeMartini, because he's big in the chiropractic world, it was Kim that actually got me to go and do a DeMartini seminar. Because he also published the network articles. It was him that got me to go back and see my network chiropractor in Notting Hill. So there's still that common denominator.
Yeah. Well, look, it's really nice to hear chiropractors, and by the way, chiropractors taking an approach where they're paying out and making an effort for their own care. Because a lot of chiropractors, and this is something I noticed with a lot of chiropractors, if they don't have a chiropractor near them or a chiropractor that works with them, a lot of them actually neglect their own chiropractic care.
Yeah. And
they won't travel for that. Personally, I used to travel an hour each way to go and get my adjustment every week.
Yeah.
Why? Because I valued it.
Yeah. My parents travel. I was going to say, it can take them a good hour to get into Bath, but they will travel to Bath to go and see a friend that does network spinal.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is the thing, is people are willing to, I have loads of clients that will travel, I don't know, 45 minutes from Hastings, because a lot of them come on the other side of Hastings. A lot of people will travel from Hastings because they specifically want to see a chiropractor that works in a way that works for them.
Yeah.
That works for them and is social proofed and has the label of it works. And that's the thing, is people will travel, and you do sometimes have to travel if you're going to find someone that really suits your needs. So it's really nice to actually hear that coming from a chiropractor as well, and that it's not just patients that are making that effort, but we have to make that effort to take care of ourselves as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So Hannah, I just want to move on, and look, you've almost touched upon this a little bit anyway, because by telling us how you look after yourself, you've kind of almost guided our patients to a way that maybe they can take care of themselves. But maybe there is a couple of tools or tips or hints that you can give to our listeners so that they could take some small steps or some actionable steps today that would help them to actually improve in their health.
So I think one of my biggest things, and it is difficult because we often live in a rat race world and technology is all around us, is sometimes just having that afternoon just to step away from everything and just having time to be with yourself. And I know it's difficult if you've got families, you're self-employed and running numerous businesses, but just being able to find that time one day a week or every other week is so important, because it can not just physically give you what I like to call a step up into kind of feeling a little bit more energized, but also mentally it can kind of give you that time that if you just need to sit and have a cry, you can sit and have a cry. If you need to have a scream, you can scream. You can have a giggle, because at the end of the day, it's just releasing whatever needs to be released.
Amazing.
So yeah, allowing yourself to be with you.
It was really interesting. I had an experience about very similar to this week with a client who actually came in and said something along the lines of, I've got so much to do. I've got this, that. And she said, I didn't do any of it. And I felt great. And I was just like, cool, you should do more of that. She's like, I can't, yeah. I've got to keep up with. And I was just like, but for why? And she goes, I don't know. And there's this, and by the way, I catch myself doing this all the time because I am a busybody. I like that constant hustle. I feel like if I'm not doing something productive, I'm wasting time. However, sometimes, and actually I find for me personally, my moments of genius come at the times that I'm relaxing. So say, for example, I was reading a David Attenborough book the other day, and just the context of reading a David Attenborough book just kind of opened my eyes and my ears and my mind up to the idea of being more sustainable, not just for the planet, but how could I be more sustainable in my practice or more sustainable with my health? And sometimes it's in those moments of relaxation you have your biggest breakthroughs.
Yeah. I mean, it was funny because I was talking with Mike yesterday. It was either yesterday or Friday we were talking, and he said to me, are you going to take time off this weekend? I was like, well, I need to make some face cloths. And he looked at me and said, that's working. I said, it's working, but I enjoy sewing, so it's not working. That's my way of relaxing.
Yeah. That's the same as me. Like, I don't mind being in practice for 10 hours a day.
I'll make you laugh. I mean, look, the sewing machine's on the dining room table.
Ready. So
Really?
if all of a sudden we start hearing a whirring noise whilst we're recording this podcast, what we basically know is that Hannah can't leave her work alone. Amazing. I love that. So look, okay, so that's super easy. Just taking, and is there like a suggested amount of time, or is there kind of something that you would get someone to focus on to be able to do that?
I don't always say a suggested time. It just depends on what you've got what you can give. I mean, sometimes I will headphones in ears, go out my back gate of the complex where I live, and literally just try and go for a half an hour walk, and just try and be and have a podcast on of some sort.
Yeah.
And listen to somebody.
Nice.
So yeah.
I love it.
And that's for a reset to go, okay, yeah, let's get on with it.
You're ready to rock and roll after that.
Yeah.
Amazing. Look, I love it. Do less to learn more, or do less to get more. Sometimes, and do you know what? It's interesting because I listen to quite a lot of mindset coaches, Wayne Dyer being one of them, another lady called Abraham Hicks. Yeah. They both talk about the idea of sometimes you do just have to do less, and Well,
that's what I love about John DeMartini's values. So he has 13 questions, which is called Defining Your Values. So he has 13 questions. Everything, if you do everything that is linked to your highest values, it's not work.
No, it's not at all. At all. Super easy.
And I joked with John and his daughter Elena, and I was like, yeah, I retired the day I graduated. And they both looked at me and just burst out laughing.
Yeah. I love it. I've done one of DeMartini's charts as well, like break down your chart of all your time and have a look at what, and he'll go, how much time do I spend on this? How much money will I make from this? How much joy do I get from this? How much would it cost me to get someone else to do the same thing? So if he's got a low joy from the thing, but it's got a high output for his life, he delegates it.
Yeah.
he delegates it. And it's the same with me, by the way. There's a lot of my stuff in my life, in order to be able to do less and stay at the same level, I've just had to learn how to delegate more.
Yeah. I've literally learned in the last like 2-3 months, just started delegating. I was like, yeah, no, that can go out to somebody. Yeah, I'll find the cash for it, but it can go out to somebody.
Exactly. So Hannah, I want to ask, there was a little bit of complications with you studying, I remember. So I remember having the conversation with you, because obviously the universities in the UK can be a little bit, what's the word? Controversial, I think is probably the right word to use, with their opinions of what chiropractic is. Whereas obviously Life West is very much a very chiropractic driven school. But what I want to ask is, if you could go back and give yourself a piece of advice. It might be before university, it may have been at university. If you could tell yourself something that would have potentially made your life easier or fast track the process, what would you go back? What piece of advice would you give to yourself, or pieces of advice would you give to yourself?
I was going to say, why I still was at Life West and kind of helping out sometimes with the prospective students weekends. I would get asked a question, being kind of the 1 or 2 British person out of a school of 800-900. My one question I would say to them is, have you looked at any other school? And sometimes they'd look at me and go, no, this is the place. And I'd be like, just go and look you don't have to go and look at it, just get the information. But sometimes it's about being at a school that fits your needs and you fitting the school.
Yeah.
I mean, I won't regret having had my time at AACC and WEOC. I mean, AAC was interesting because of what my body did and having a very rare tumor diagnosed and luckily taken out. But it got me in the circle of the World Congress of Chiropractic students.
Yeah.
And that is how I then met Brian Kelly and got to know people. And I will also say, if it wasn't for Brian, I would have never met people like Andrew Wakefield and Dale Bigtree, who are very big in the States in helping people understand and just like learn what the risks are with certain chemicals. But yeah, it's definitely about finding the school that fits you.
Going back and find, and not even necessarily a school, but finding the place that fits you. So if you were to apply the same thing to patients, a lot of people think that the closest practice to them is going to be the best practice for them, and it might not be, because there are a lot of towns that will only have one chiropractor in them, and then you may have to actually travel. You have to. I mean, like I say, I personally get patients travel from all over Sussex. So I have patients travel from Brighton.
Yeah.
I have patients travel from Peacehaven and Crowborough, Rye, Lydd, Hastings, Seaford, Bexhill, Pevensey, like all the surrounding towns to Eastbourne in every direction, Helsham, like all of these towns, patients will travel down to Eastbourne to come in to our clinic. Why? Yeah. Because the clinics that are in their areas do not meet their needs, in the same sense that, like I say, you might go to a university and it may be very almost, I sometimes use the word physical terrorist, it's almost like being a physiotherapist as opposed to being a chiropractor, which is fine, by the way, if that's how you want to practice. But not every chiropractor will want to do rehabilitation. Why? Because they want to niche in their specific area. It might be neurology or network, or it may be into toggle or SOT. And sometimes your school may not fit that, just in the same sense that your practice may not fit those philosophies for you. And you may find that you need something like a nutrition plan as well. And if that practice is doing brilliant at adjusting you, but not applying the nutrition plan like Hannah's had to do, you may actually have to find more than one school, so that you can go to different practices to learn different things, so you can actually best work with health.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same with Wiltshire. So if it helps, every other weekend I'm in Wiltshire, because I privately work in Wiltshire as well.
Yep.
And I have clients that travel 1 hour and 15 minutes
Yeah. And people will travel when they find someone that really works for them.
Yeah.
And they will continue to travel, and some will actually travel for the rest of their life. Like I say, when I was working in Brighton, I used to have patients that would travel 2 hours to come and see us.
Yep, crazy, but it's worth it.
If the benefit is there.
Yeah.
Of course. Amazing. So look, you've given us so much information today, and I know there's been some amazing value, but there may be questions that I haven't asked you that people want to know the answers to. Maybe people want to know a little bit more about your side business in the face cloths as well. So if there's any chiropractors that are listening to this, or other practitioners that are listening to this that might want to look at stuff like that, or they may want to know a little bit more about your techniques. What kinds of ways can people get in touch with you? What kind of websites and stuff have you got? Maybe tell us a little bit more about how we can get in touch with you.
So I was going to say the best website in some ways is probably my personal one, which I'm trying to expand and grow at the moment, which is antschiro.co.uk.
Antz
So,
Chiro.
Yeah, so ANTTZ.
ANTTZ.
Chiro.co.uk. So it's a little bit of a take on my surname, because Emmett in Cornish means ant.
Mm-hmm.
So hence ants. There is also a Facebook page which is ants face cloths. So people get to see kind of like the colourful designs that are done. And other than that, I mean, email address. So my email address is antschiro@gmail.com.
Amazing.
And if not, the Fulham, so censushealth.com is the other way of contacting.
Amazing. So look, what we'll do is I'll make sure that Hannah gets all of those sent over to me, and we'll put them in the description that goes with this video and goes with the audio for our podcast on Spotify and iTunes. So we'll make sure that all of those details are in the comments and the descriptions below. So Hannah, I want to say a massive thank you for jumping on with us. But what I've got one last question for you. And I call this the wow question, which is your parting words of wisdom. So maybe there is a quote or a saying or a mantra or some sort of just last bit of advice that you feel like the people that are listening to the show really, really need to know coming to the end of this podcast.
I was going to say there's probably about 2 or 3 quotes that always stand out the most to me.
Okay.
One of them being a Donnie quote, which is the shape, tension, and tone of your spine relates to the shape, tension, and tone of your life. So I always love that one. My other one that is very much a Kim Jobs quote is meanings matter. So whatever you're thinking, whatever is going on, they do matter. Don't brush them aside. And then my other probably favorite one, which I actually have on my iPad screen, is master the skill of taking chaos and challenging and turning it into order, which is John DeMartini.
We love our quotes.
I love my quotes.
Yeah. Love the quotes. Do you know what? I've got Thomas Edison's quote up on the wall, but actually I like some of those quotes. I'm actually looking to get some more quotes put on our wall in the clinic in the next 6 months to a year, just because it's those punchy little things that really make people stop and think. And ironically, the ethos of our practice and the questions that patients ask changes quite drastically when you put very small and subtle quotes on the wall, and even if they consciously or subconsciously read it, those kinds of things. And it was interesting, which was the one that you said, meanings matter.
Meanings matter.
Meanings matter.
Yeah, meanings matter by Kim Jobs.
The idea of, having those things on the wall and the sense of meaning of those things, it does matter subconsciously what we do. And it's super important not to brush those things aside.
We actually have a blackboard up on one of our walls in the clinic, and we try and change the quote every other week.
Amazing.
And I think one of our biggest ones that got a lot of kind of like people looking at it was like writing down the side was fear.
Right.
FEAR. And then next to it, false expectation appearing real.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, I like that. Look, it's been so nice to talk to you and actually have a very level-headed conversation with another chiropractor that loves chiropractic. Because, by the way, one secret that I've got about me and Hannah is we're both horrendous workaholics. I remember speaking to Chris, who is one of Hannah's colleagues, and tries to get her to take a day off. She's like, Saturdays are not for days off. It's one of the busiest days in the practice. I just want to be there. So she's very much like me. Like, so long as there's patients booked in the diary, she would be there from 8 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night. So long as there's just people there. And it's really nice when you actually get to meet Hannah. There's a very nice vibe and energy that comes from Hannah, and I can only imagine that emanates in the practice when she's working. So I just want to say a massive thank you for coming on. I appreciate that. Is this your first podcast you've ever done?
It is, yes.
So for someone's first podcast, you can tell that obviously she talks the talk. She actually practices the way that she's actually demonstrating here as well. So I just want to say a massive thank you for jumping on with us, and it's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And so for everyone listening, this is another episode of Coffee with the Chiropractor with your host, Patrick Hogg. And again, one last thank you for Hannah for jumping on with us today. And we'll speak to you again soon.